Straight into the wall. Gets another bite! Oh, goodness me! Alexis Sanchez, unstoppable!
Robin is there! Iron Robin! Has surely won it for Bayern Munich! It's Ibrahimovic! 1-0 PSG. And here he is again. Here he is again. That's astonishing. It's absolutely world class.
Hello and welcome to the Football Hipsters podcast. It is the Satchel time again, and yet again I've got a different person filling in. I think it's this man's second appearance. Welcome back to Drew. Good evening, Drew.
Good evening, Chris. Good evening, guys.
This is your second Satchel, isn't it? I'm sure we did one together before. I thought so. Good. Well, thank you for stepping in. John is working away
Being John.
in Birmingham. Yes, leave it there. And Ross is away doing bits and bobs, and Tom is out with his friends. So busy people. So I have turned to Drew, and with good reason, because we've got plenty to talk about in relation to Bayern Munich. More on that in a minute. So we got Champions League semi-finals and Europa League semi-finals to talk about ahead of the finals, which we now know what they are. Drew, I'm going to start with Real Madrid and Manchester City, though, sure. Champions League-wise. Now, obviously, we didn't do a Satchel after the first legs, obviously with time allowing and stuff. We thought it would be better just to wrap these up after the events. So not a lot to talk about really as far as the first game goes. It was 0-0 at the Etihad. Real Madrid missing two pretty good late chances, but overall 0-0 was probably a fairly fair result in what was a bit of a tepid affair. So let's talk about the second game. Real Madrid going through with a 1-0 victory. It's been classed as a Fernando own goal after Gareth Bale escaped a static-looking line. Rather than talk about the game, because not a lot happened, I just want to talk about both clubs. So, starting with the team that go out, Manchester City. They've first ever European semi-final. They've gone out with a bit of a whimper. Are they going to look at this as what could have been, or are they going to look at this as progress for the future?
I think probably a bit of both. But, I mean, honestly, I don't know if they could have come into this, second leg at the Bernabeu and be confident. Especially with, there is a bit of a quality gap between two sides. I think everyone can agree on that. But I don't know if they played in a way that they really felt they could actually win. If you look at the body language of the players, if you look at some of the numbers that you in the post-match, I don't think they did enough. So in that sense, it could have be classified as could have been. But it's a good stepping stone, for a semi-final in Champions League. Pep is coming in, and all now people will troll Pep for his knack for getting knocked out in semifinals with Bayern Munich. But it's a good stepping stone for them to now Pep knows he has something to work with. Specifically, certain players, like Kun Aguero and Kevin De Bruyne and players like that. He has some core players who now have been that far, and he'll come in and want to use that as a stepping stone to try to finally get back to the Champions League final. So I think it's a bit of both, but no hard. They shouldn't feel that hard done. I think it's you can't really go to Madrid and expect a result. Usually, most teams don't get it. So I think they're just lucky they only lost 1-0.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a bit of a baptism of fire. However, they did, because if they went out early, they'd have failed again. If they go out at this stage, they'll say they've missed out on an opportunity. So it's a bit of a tough one. I just want to ask you. It's going to play a little game here because we're doing this very much off track, and I want to play a little game of who stays and who goes with Manchester City squad, because we're going to touch on Pep Guardiola more in a minute. But just ahead of his arrival, a lot of people said that City didn't really turn up last night. They went out with a bit of a whimper. It wasn't a particularly great performance. So I'm going to read you a list of Man City's players here.
Yeah.
And I want you to simply say stay or go.
Okay.
So Joe Hart.
I think he stays.
Willy Caballero.
He goes.
Bakary Sagna.
I think he actually might stay.
Interesting. Vincent Kompany.
I think he'll stay. I think he'll be the only starter of the center backs that stays, honestly.
So Kolarov and Zabaleta.
Yeah, I think they're both gone.
Gael Clichy.
I think he's probably also going to go.
Kylian Mangala.
I think I don't know. I think I'll have to put that on as I don't know.
Fair.
He might stay, he might go.
Fair enough. Nicolas Otamendi.
I think it's also going to be a maybe what if. I think it'll have one of those things where Pep will have to assess him when he sees him more in training and then figure it out.
And Martin Demichelis, I think that's pretty much a guaranteed gone, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Midfield wise, Fernando.
I think he'll stay. I think he can play a role for Pep in certain ways.
Fair enough. You've got Raheem Sterling.
I think he stays.
Yeah, Sami Nasri.
I think he'll stay as well.
Jesus Navas.
I think he's gone.
Yep.
Playing under Pep at all.
Agreed. Fabian Delph.
He'll stay.
David Silva.
Stay.
Yaya Toure.
Gone.
Fernandinho.
He'll stay, I think.
Kevin De Bruyne. Got to stay,
Oh,
hasn't he?
please. Yeah, he's so. Yeah.
And then the last three, Sergio Aguero,
Stays.
Wilfried Bony,
Gone.
Kelechi Iheanacho.
He'll definitely stay. That's a perfect Pep player. The youth, he already has his youth project in place.
Yes, I would totally agree. So, based upon that, and I must admit, I didn't realise that that the average age of that Manchester City side is, crikey, they are quite old, aren't they? I have to say. I didn't realise Fernandinho is actually 31.
Yeah.
I genuinely didn't realise that. So based upon that, and the only player that I can think that, well, I think there's two players that might come back, and I have to check one of them actually. So while I do that, talk to me about Jason Denayer, because I think I'm right in saying you know a little bit about him because he's Belgian, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Went on loan at Celtic, then went on loan. I think he went to Turkey, didn't he?
Yeah, he's at. He should be at Galatasaray.
Galatasaray. So what do you know about him? Because he's been rated very highly in both Belgium and indeed overseas. And there's talk that he could be coming back as maybe the project that Pat might want to work with defensively. So do you think he's one that could come back in the summer?
I mean, I think he could. I mean, we see what Pep's done with someone like Joshua Kimmich as an example, or even if you see what he's done with Kingsley Coman. I know it's a different position, but it's kind of similar. So Denayer, he can play right back, he can play center back. For his age, a lot of people in Belgium feel like he's going to have a future moving forward. It won't be this summer at the Euros. It'll probably he'll have a shot at the 2018 World Cup squad should they make it, but then definitely the next Euros. By then he'll be 24, pushing on his prime. I think he has kind of the tools to fit a Pep system. Pep does he likes to tinker. So the fact that he can either play right back or center back, I think that Pep will automatically enjoy that. He does like possessing the ball. He's actually quite good at creating chances from the back four, which is something that Pep will also like. Sometimes, even though we see Pep's teams, they like a bit of the ball, to say the least, but they do always have players who can pick out that 40, 50, 60-yard ball if necessary, if they see the opening. You see a lot of players at Bayern Munich right now who have that ability. So I think that could be one of the two youth projects he'll take on. And it's ironic because at Bayern right now he has the Kimmich youth project, and he also had the Coman youth project, and now he'll get the Iheanacho youth project and the Denayer youth project should he come back. So it's automatically just replacing two players he has right now at a different club but play the same positions. He'll get that at City, so it won't be that much of a change in lifestyle from a coaching standpoint necessarily. But I think he could play a role, yeah, especially because they do have a lot of older, aging players. We just rattled them off: Clichy, Sanya, Demichelis, all those players. Kolarov, they're all pushing 30, if not over 30. So I know Pep will want to do a lot of revamping in the back four. I think it's a lot of what people are expecting. So, and if you can get an option for cheap or free in Denayer, he'll do it. So there you go.
Yeah, interesting. Yes, be keen to see. I know a lot of City fans rate him very highly. We're surprised he went on loan. The other one, of course, Patrick Roberts, who's at Fulham on loan. Big things expected of him. He's likely to come back and attempt to force his way in. Good luck with that. Although, strangely, I think they let their best youth project go when they let Ronnie Lopez go to Monaco, who's now at Lille on loan. But it's another story for a rainy day. So that's enough City then. So disappointment for them. They go out of this stage, but nevertheless, they'll have learnt some lessons from it, no doubt. Let's talk about Real Madrid. I have to say, firstly, Sergio Ramos, your hair is wretched and it needs to go. I don't know what he's thinking. It's the most horrible haircut I've ever seen. But that aside...
Most of the time, anyway.
It's just so bad. That aside, though, Real Madrid, as we say, going through 1-0 on aggregate. Far from convincing, I think it's fair to say. Luka Modric, an absolute stormer in that second leg, completely dominated that midfield, and Cristiano Ronaldo, I don't think looked 100% fit, no matter what he says. He didn't look it. Benzema was missing, of course. We'll come on to the other semi-final and who they're going to face in the final in a second, but Real on course for what would be their 11th Champions League. What sort of mindset are they in? They haven't conceded a goal all season at home in this competition, so they're going into the final in fairly good fettle. But do they convince you? Because they I don't know. They don't me. I don't know whether that's harsh.
I know. Tom, I mean, our beloved Tom does rave about a lot of the Real Madrid players individually. I think Real's weakness, for me personally, I think it's tactically. I think if you shut down the right players, you shut down Real, and it's not even about putting a leash on, Ronaldo or even Benzema. I think if you shackle the likes of Modric and Kris and their ability to control the midfield, I think you shut down Real Madrid. And there's no better team suited to do that in the world at the moment than Atletico Madrid. So, I mean, you would expect Real to go through at home in the second leg and against City, and you have a chance at the 11th. But I don't know. For all the individual talent, I don't think they have what it takes to really truly break Atletico down in a one-off dogfight like that. I think that'll be the issue. I think if it was a two-leg affair, they might have a chance. But in a final, in a one-off where you don't have the Bernabeu crowd to call on, likewise, Atletico won't have the Calderon's crowd, which is brilliant. But I just think Atletico are more suited to shut down Real than Real are to break down Atletico. So
this is going to be interesting. We'll go into Atletico in a second, but just the other thing on Real Madrid, do you get the impression that they're one of these clubs that almost sort of play off of the fact that once they get to a final, they expect to win? There's an inner confidence there. There's a sort of a thought behind that they're in the final now, so they will win. And there's this almost winning mentality throughout the club that even when they're not playing particularly well, they fancy that they're going to win. Is that enough at this level, that winning mentality?
I think winning mentality plays an important role no matter what level you play at. But I don't know if it's enough. Confidence is always fantastic. I mean, the Romans had all the confidence in the world, but even they still lost from time to time. So I don't really know if that'll do the trick. Again, Ronaldo will have to be 100%. That's the first thing, and I think you're right in saying that you thought he wasn't 100% against Man City. I think you're correct in that. He'll have to turn up, and he'll have to be completely fit. He's a key asset, of course. The likes of Bale will have to be influential again because they're going to have to rely on other players that aren't their central players. Because if Atletico play the way you think, then this mentality of we're in a final now, we have a chance at 11, we can do it. I think that's a moot point, certainly, especially at the highest level. I think I don't know when another team knows how to play against you so well. I think you walking in confident sometimes can work against you as well as be in your court. So I don't know. I don't think they'll do it enough. I think they're going to need some stellar performances. I think that's going to be the key factor. I don't think it has anything to do with them going into a match being confident.
No, winning mentality only gets you so far. But it will be interesting because it is going to be, as we've briefly touched on, an all-Madrid final. And that takes us nicely on to the second of the semi-finals. A 1-0 victory for Atletico in Spain in the first leg with a Saul Niguez stunning individual goal, has to be said. Now, this second leg, what did you make of it, first of all? Because obviously you know a lot about Bayern Munich and following the Bundesliga quite closely. Did it go according to plan? Because, I mean, we'll come on to Atletico, but I thought Bayern more than deserved to go through, and they haven't. So
I actually think they did. And even Dirk Simeone came out in the post-match, and he was saying how the first 45 minutes was some of the best football he's ever managed against in his career up to this point. I think it did go to plan. They got the first goal. That's step one. Thomas Muller, of all people, didn't convert a penalty kick, which is the rarest of the rare. So if he slots that home and Bayern go into the dressing room up 2-0, you almost expect them to then go on and get a third before the 60th minute, and then that would have been done and dusted. So I think it went to plan and to a point, but Atletico the type of team or Simeone also the type of manager where after the first 45 minutes, if you give him that opportunity to then revamp what he wants to do, make a little adjustments here and there, I think once Atletico settled down, it was almost kind of their sort of match. Bayern are always going to create chances at home. You can't really stop that. Even Atletico can't stop. Bayern had, 34 attempts, 12 on target. So, that was never. It was never a question of, can they shut Bayern down? It was more of, can they skirt by with a result that favored them. So in that sense, I think Bayern are hard done. They put in probably one of their best Champions League performances of the season, and it wasn't enough. But then again, that's also their fault because they're so concentrated on trying to get goals that all it takes is one moment of just mental relapse, and then Atletico drew level. And then for the rest of the match, they're scrambling to not just get one more goal, but two. So I think they should feel hard done, but it'll be. I'd actually kind of prefer an All Madrid final, and that's why I don't have any level loss for Bayern. So
yeah, no, true. Though, yeah, just don't forget you are a Borussia Dortmund follower, but we'll come back to Pep in a second. But let's just touch briefly on Atletico. They divide opinion. I think that's fair to say. I'm personally not much of a fan. I'm not really.
Yeah, surely not.
I know. I have to preface this by saying Antoine Griezmann, I'm a big fan of. I do not as much as our Tom, bless him, but I do think he's. I remember seeing him at Real Sociedad and thinking this kid's got it all. If he gets the right move and he's got nurtured in the right way, he's got it all. And he had a hell of a partnership with Zuratuza at Sociedad, and I did think that. I thought, yeah, he's going to be good. I didn't think he'd be this good. No, we said watching the last World Cup as well. I think we thought that he had a decent World Cup. But he's gone to another level, and Atletico do have some very gifted, talented players. Saúl Ñíguez is obviously one. I think Koke is another immensely talented player, as well as the centre-backs. What could you not say about Godin and Jimenez as well? But there is this sort of stigma attached. They are a bit defensive. Some of the football is a little bit hard on the eye at times. And they certainly are a team that know how to play the dark arts. And even though that wasn't hugely in evidence on Wednesday night, there was still an element of a bit of time wasting, a bit of lay on the floor for 5 minutes. There was an element of it. Where do you sit on this Atletico argument? And do you see the final as Beauty versus the Beast, as it's kindly been dubbed?
Well, through our long-standing conversations we all have in our side groups for FHP, I think you kind of know where I stand. But for the betterment of the listeners who don't know, basically, I personally don't care. Football, it's called a beautiful game for a lot of reasons, obviously. But when you get to this level, it's about results. It's about winning. And Atletico are getting results. They do what they do, and it's made them immensely successful. Just look at the league, for example. They've only allowed 16 goals in La Liga this season, and while they have scored, I think north of 60, so they may not score. While while Barca and Real Madrid have scored 100 plus. 60 goals is a decent return. And when you allow 16, that's the exact reason why they are where they are domestically. It's what brought them success in recent seasons as well. You can't really fault that. I know people will describe it as destructive football. That's a term I've heard a lot, and it makes sense, sure, but they're not going to care about that. They rely on, they're well drilled. They work harder than anybody. They're all intelligent on the pitch. Their shape is always fantastic. Simeone is an excellent man motivator from the sidelines. I know a lot of people at other clubs who would love to have a manager who is constantly first minute to 90th minute running the sidelines, yelling, giving orders, switching tactics. All those things play an important role. But also you can't really discount the fact that they do have those key players like, Antoine Griezmann, Saúl Ñíguez, these type of players who can come up in big moments. And Griezmann's been doing that all season. Saúl Ñíguez's goal in the first leg was a prime example of that. And then you have someone like Koke, who is probably one of the more well-rounded central players in the world right now. If you look at the kind of season he's had for Atletico this year, that's how you build a team. It's not always about spending money on flashy players, and getting things done and beating people 7-8-0 sometimes. It's about if you can get 3 points, if you can get a result, if you can go away from home and do what's required. It might not be pretty. Even if you're at home, it still might not be pretty, but the fans aren't going to care. If your club's winning, at the end of the day, when they go to sleep, that's all they really care about. So,
yeah, true that. So let's sort of look at the other side of the coin then, and quickly talk about Bayern Munich. Now, Pep Guardiola obviously is coming into a job at Manchester City, which, whatever way you look at it, he's going to get time in England, because the English media, for our foreign listeners, are absolutely smitten with Guardiola. I mean, properly, it borders on repulsive how smitten they are. But he's going to get time, and rightly so, in fairness. He needs to rebuild, as you said earlier, an aging squad. But in Germany, and particularly in Bild this morning, I was reading, he has been dubbed, ultimately, the project in Bayern has been dubbed a failure. Now, I just want to ask you on twofold. A, is it a failure in your eyes? And B, is failure a bit strong because, albeit, yes, he's expected to win titles, but he has taken on players tactically, mentally, positionally. I mean, you look at David Alaba, Kingsley Coman. He has taken players' games to a new level. So which side, again, of the fence do you sit in? Do you sit in the failure side, or do you sit in the could have done better and is ultimately unlucky side?
I think again, I have my bias, but bias aside, I do actually think it is a bit of a failure, but only from a results standpoint. He came in when Jupp Heynckes just won Champions League, and Bayern was already still back to winning the league. So all Pep has really done from a results standpoint is he's kept on the tradition of Bayern winning the league, and that's happened. But he hasn't gotten what they really want. Pep was brought in to come to the next level and make Bayern an established winner of Champions League, to get to the final each season. That's what they wanted out of Pep. That's why they brought him in from Barca, and he hasn't done that. He hasn't made the final any year he's been there. So I do think from that standpoint, it is a failure, because when you look at the type of players he has at his disposal, some of the players he has, Lewandowski, David Alaba, Thomas Müller, Manuel Neuer, all these type of players are, you could argue, some of the best players in the world, if not the best players in the world at their positions, and yet still he has no final appearance to show for it. On the other hand, you bring up a really good point when you say that he has helped other players reach another level. David Alaba, for me, and for Tom and some other people, pound for pound, is the best left back in world football. Thomas Müller, Lewandowski, these are some of the best center forwards and attacking midfielders you have on offer. He took a punt on Douglas Costa, who no one expected to settle that quickly. And while the second half of the season has been more disappointing than the first half of the season, he's still been excellent overall. He's done his Pep thing. He's tinkered. He's brought more flexibility tactically to Bayern, even though a lot of fans don't actually appreciate it. They like to stick to tradition there, but he has been successful on that front, from a tactical front, from bringing the best out of players. The way he's brought Joshua Kimmich on, and he's helped him develop. Kingsley Coman, another prime example. Took him on a loan from Juve, and now Kingsley Coman is probably in line for a starting berth for France in the Euros in a couple months. So from those standpoints, I think he's done incredibly well, and I think City can look forward to that. But when it comes to a results standpoint, he hasn't done enough for Bayern for what they wanted. And even I was just reading that Ivica Olic said the exact same thing. That's not what they wanted from him. They wanted him to win Champions League at least one time while he was there. So the board will think it's a failure, but he has a new project now at City, which is slightly similar to Bayern. So he has another kind of a refresh and a restart, and maybe he'll do it there.
Yeah, it'd be very, very interesting to see how he does, and I'm sure the world will be looking in with great interest when he rocks up at City in the summer, and probably casts aside quite a lot of players, as we mentioned earlier in the pod. Right, so the final is an all Madrid final, an all Spanish final. Tom will be delighted. It's on Saturday, the 28th of May. It is in Milan's Stadium, San Siro. We at TFHP will, of course, be all over the final. We are planning to record a sort of a post-final podcast, whether that be on the day or a day after, we're not sure yet, but stay tuned. Let's move on to the Europa League then. And we'll just touch on the games that were played tonight at time of recording. We'll start in Spain with Sevilla, who had an entertaining first leg with Shakhtar Donetsk. 2-2 draw, Vitolo putting Sevilla in front, Marlos Stepanenko turning it on its head, and a late Kevin Gamero penalty getting the two away goals in the end for Sevilla. And then tonight, that man again, he's probably not going to go to the Euros, amazingly, but Gamero again, ex-Lorient forward, I should add, legend. He scored twice. Mariano also scored, an ex-Arsenal man, Eduardo da Silva, pulling one back for Shakhtar in vain in the end. So Sevilla are through to the final. This is their third straight final, Drew. What chances do you give them at retaining the trophy for a third straight time? And do you think that potentially, this is always a touchy subject, but Sevilla, this run that they've been on, do you think that their boss Unai Emery should be in more demand? Because in La Liga their away record is not good, but you can't fault the success they're having.
I mean, you can't, but it's a difficult question. I mean, first, to tackle the first part of what you asked, I think I would put their chance. I mean, we said the first Satchel I came on, I said that you have to really put Sevilla down as one of the favorites, if not the favorite, to make the final and win it. So the fact that they're now in the final sort of reflects what we were discussing. And I feel like, when you've reached three straight, there's something you're doing at the club that makes that the reality. And it's something that no other club is capable of doing. And I think where you've brought it up, where their away form at home isn't very good, and even their away form in Europe sometimes is questionable. But I feel like those one of those teams where they're made for cup competitions. I think a lot of Spanish clubs in general are made for cup competitions. Just because of how serious they take them. They don't really rest players. They'll play their 11 on a Thursday, even if they have to play a derby on a Sunday in the league. But, so they take it seriously. But there's just something about like the way Spanish teams are run, the way that they're deployed, the way that their type of football kind of counteracts the things that you see in Champions League and Europa League, where it just makes it easier for them to get through. Whether if your style is an Atletico style or a Barca style, usually Spanish teams turn up. So, and usually English teams don't. So while Liverpool, and we'll talk about that more later, while they've done incredibly well under Jurgen Klopp, who ironically enough has put emphasis on winning Europa League, so that's a different style than what you might see from an English manager per se. But I'd say Sevilla's experience will put them through. I think they have key players that are turning up in the right moments. Like you said, I think it's a travesty that Gamero isn't making the Euro squad. I think you have to go with him on form, but he won't make it. But I think you'd have to put them, 70% chance of winning, just because they've been there before twice. So their time's a charm. We'll see. But in regards to Unai Emery, I know I've had a lot of debates with a lot of people, whether it be Arsenal fans or fans of other big clubs, where a lot of people will throw his name out in a debate to say, who do you want for the next manager, whether it's to replace Wenger or whoever else. And Unai Emery does come up. But I think he divides opinion as well. I think you mentioned the fact that his away record, Sevilla's away record under him hasn't always been stellar. I think that might sort of, at times, highlight the fact that maybe they struggle to adapt away from home, or the fact that they rely too heavily on the home support to really see them through. But I think their performance away at Shakhtar in the first leg sort of, kind of get rid of the rumor a little bit. When you go, Ukraine's a really easy place to go, and you get a 2-2, and that suits you. 2 away goals is perfect when you're going home to a place like Seville. So I think in that one instance, I think he showed that they can be pretty decent away from home, but I don't know. I don't know if his away record should really be held against him. I think he's done incredible things with Sevilla, with a club who really they're not blessed with an incredible amount of talent. They have some good players like Konoplyanka and Kevin Gamera's done well. Koshowiak's one of the better holding midfielders in the world, but pound for pound on from a talent level, Sevilla are lagging behind. So the fact that he's made them this consistent in a difficult club competition like Europa League, I think that deserves some credit. But I don't know if it'll deserve enough for him to maybe make a step up. I don't think there's anyone bigger in Spain who's going to want him, and you never know if he would ever really survive in somewhere like the Bundesliga or the Premier League. So I think it'll be interesting summer for him because I think eventually he might want to move on. So we'll see.
Yeah, it'd be certainly one to watch because his name is one that pops up all more regularly as time goes on. But they're in the final, and they're on course for a third straight victory. Their opponents are coming from the Premier League. Liverpool have got through the tie against Villarreal, so one of the other Spanish teams doesn't make it. The first leg was a 1-0 victory for Villarreal, and I think they went into the second leg as slight favourites, but wouldn't you know it, a missed opportunity at 0-0 for Villarreal, punished within minutes by Liverpool at the other end. Missed opportunity, and then Bruno own goal for the first goal. Sturridge and Alana sealing the second half victory. Victor Ruiz was sent off for Villarreal in the 71st minute, which didn't help. So Liverpool are back into another European final. Granted, in probably the lesser of the two European competitions, it's fair to say, but they're in a final. Jurgen Klopp, talk to me. Do you obviously had experience of him when he was at Borussia Dortmund. Do you think he is or should be as highly rated as he is, or do you think he's found the exactly sort of perfect club in Liverpool to showcase his personality, shall we say?
Well, I don't know, I think at Dortmund he was already at the perfect club to showcase his personality, but I think Liverpool sort of continues that trend for him. The way, even though he does divide fan opinion, a lot of fans at Liverpool are questioning a lot of the selections he's made, how he's focused on trying to win the Europa League, and then he's rested players in the league in key matches, and then vice versa. So sometimes they feel like he gets the selections wrong, or that some people just don't understand some of the tactics he uses on certain days. But when it comes to Klopp, sometimes charisma and passion and being that sort of insane like motivator, sometimes it works, like we've seen it in a different way with Simeone at Atletico. And the way Liverpool started this season, you would never expect them to be in the Europa League final. And I think Klopp does have a lot to do with it, but I also think that a lot of the players, they are behind him, and I think they like the changes he's brought around. He's gotten the best out of players that Brendan Rodgers didn't know how to use. I think he does deserve credit. Coutinho's continued to play well, but Firmino looks a completely different player under Klopp than Brendan Rodgers, and it has a lot to do with the way Klopp saw him when Firmino was at Hoffenheim. He knew exactly what he was getting when he came in. And he knew, and it was almost instant where Firmino's form turned around, and he's been excellent ever since. He's using Emre Can in a much more preferred role for him, and Emre Can's quality is not coming to the fore. Nathaniel Klein looks improved. With Daniel Sturridge back, he gets that quick, pacey forward he does like to have in certain situations. So, and players like Adam Lallana and James Milner, their tireless work ethic sort of comes into Klopp's gegenpress that he used at Dortmund. And I know it's not sustainable and he won't be using it long term at Liverpool, but I think it's brought them success right now. And I think you saw that in their match against Villarreal. They were absolutely relentless from start to finish, and a lot of that has to do with Liverpool at home at Anfield on a European night. I'm not any remotely close to being fond of Liverpool, but you have to admire how well they turn up at Anfield on European nights. I think this is one of those other examples. They were down 1-0 after the first leg. If Villarreal tucks that chance away, it's all of a sudden 2-0. It could very well have easily been a different match, but it didn't happen. That instant response, so how many times have we seen from Liverpool where the away team almost scores, minutes later they get that first goal, and all of a sudden Liverpool are just, the stadium's rocking for the rest of the match, and then the players feed off that. Klopp also feeds off that, and the players feed off of Klopp. So you have all these different entities that are feeding off each other, and I think that's one of the reasons why I think Klopp works for them. But when it comes to him, he's going to need to find something that's more sustainable in the long term, or else he's going to have the same problem that he found at Dortmund. Gegenpress wasn't sustainable at Dortmund, which is why they struggled so much last season in the first half, because the players were just tired. They were exhausted. Sometimes they didn't want someone who is just aggressive in his personality. But I think that suits Liverpool a bit more. But he'll have to adapt a little bit more. And once he gets more players than he wants, I think we'll see more from him next season. And then I think you can really measure him, whether it's good or bad. But for the moment, I think he's doing what they would have wanted, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't do much more than get into a final of something that you're in, essentially. So he came in, they're in the Europa League, and he's made the final. Can't really do much more than that. I should say at this point that I know a lot of our English viewers or listeners, although John has explained it, I've tried my best to just double check what happens if Liverpool win the Europa League. The talk is, this is from The Guardian, who usually know their stuff. They said if Liverpool win the competition but do not finish in the qualification position in the league, then just 2 English clubs will be represented in the Europa League, with 5 going into the Champions League. So what that basically means, as far as we know, and we may be wrong, but hopefully we get it right, if Liverpool win the Europa League, they will join Arsenal, Manchester City, Leicester and Tottenham in the Champions League, subject to all of them qualifying, of course. And of course finishing in those positions, and then there'll be 2 Europa League spots which were currently occupied by Manchester United and West Ham. If they don't win it, then it'll go down to the next place below those 2 in the league. So that's as far as we understand it. But if we're wrong, then sorry, it's very confusing. If John's not here, the whole pod falls apart. That's what happens. See. So the final, Liverpool-Sevilla, will be on Wednesday, the 18th of May, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a week on Wednesday. Yes, it is. And that will be in Basel's home ground, Basel in Switzerland. So again, we will be across that, and we'll report back on how it goes. Drew, call 2 winners for us from those 2 finals. Who do you see lifting the European silverware?
I think Atletico will win Champions League, and I expect Sevilla to win Europa League. But I think Liverpool will give a good go of it. I don't think it's going to be a bore. I think it'll be one of those exciting ones. So for both matches, honestly. So we'll see.
Yes. I disagree on one. I agree on the other. I think Sevilla will have just about enough to beat Liverpool. I fancy Real to do the to put the ghost to rest, because they don't have the best record against Atletico. But we shall see. We shall see. It'll be an interesting final, whatever. Now, we haven't had many questions. In fact, we've only had the one question tonight. So I'll finish with this question, which it's very much geared towards you anyway, so it works out quite nicely.
Fair enough.
It comes from our friend Bren, who's at Kane You Dig It, or Kane _you _dig _it. He says, how do you rate Liverpool's progression in Europe under Klopp? So taking aside what he's done for the club as a whole, just specifically in Europe, what do you rate them? Obviously, you've touched on Klopp already, but how do you think they've progressed under him in Europe?
I think they've done well. Again, you wouldn't have ever thought it was possible for them to be at this point, even with Klopp coming in. A lot of people thought that Liverpool was beyond help until the summer, where he could really get his hands into the club and into the staff and some of the players. But I think they've progressed well, because this is, I don't know, it's kind of hard to say, but this is kind of where Liverpool thrive, and Klopp does have he had a tendency to really prioritize success in Europe. So I think that sort of helped them out. But I just think where they went from a scenario where they were with a manager who they lost complete faith in, and their body language showed that on the pitch. And then Klopp's come in, and over time, eventually, I feel like the players got to know him. The way his tactics have changed, the way he brought like the high pressing, quicker pace, where he switched tactics, where he's using players in a different way than Rodgers did. He's getting the best out of those players. So I think the progression has been solid in all areas. But I don't know. I don't know how else to answer that question, but basically they're just at a point where I wouldn't have expected them to be, not until next season. That's even if they even made Europe, if this wasn't the scenario. But I don't know. I feel like, again, I think this is the best you could have ever expected, probably above expectations. So I think they've done well.
Yeah, fair answer. And just before we wrap up, I've just seeing as I've got you here, I figured I'll ask you this question since we've got the time. Currently looking at the Bundesliga table, as it stands, Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund are Champions League definites. Bayer Leverkusen, I think they're officially now definite as well.
They are.
Mönchengladbach at the moment just about are favourites for the promotion or the playoff spot, although Hertha BSC are also same points, and Schalke just a point back, and even Mainz, a long shot, 2 points back, could get there. And then obviously, as I say, Hertha and Schalke at the moment in Europa League spots. Let's say the table stays as it is, which I think we probably expect it to, in truth. Let's say the 4 clubs in the Champions League. Who do you expect to do best in the Champions League next year out of Bayern, Dortmund, Leverkusen, and Mönchengladbach? And if it's Bayern, which I fully expect it to be, how do you figure that the other teams? What do you think the other teams need to do strength and wise to be able to reach the latter stages?
So I fully expect it to be Bayern to do the best. I mean, they're not going to give up a lot of players in the wake of Pep's leaving. Thiago Alcantara, for example, might kind of almost follow Pep out of the club. They might lose Mario Götze depending on how Ancelotti wants to use him, but Ancelotti's a supremely experienced manager. So I don't think a lot of it's going to change. I probably expect him to win the league. I expect him to at least make the quarterfinals of Champions League next season, but I think he'll come in, and I think Bayern will lay down their expectations that they had when Pep was there. I think they're going to want to make it to a Champions League final, so you have to expect them to be the favorites to go the deepest of those 4. You would probably expect Gladbach to be the odd one out of the 4 again. I expect them to make the group stage, obviously, but they have a lot of issues that can get exposed in Europe. They're really susceptible to getting hit on the break a lot, and with Granit Xhaka how he might be leaving the club, that leaves them a little bit more open as well at the back. They have questions over their center backs, questions at goalkeeper. So I expect Gladbach to. I don't know. I think they might have to settle with making Europa League via the Champions League group stage again. The question will be Leverkusen or Dortmund. I think under Tuchel, Dortmund, they're quite good. They score an absolute ton of goals. They've outscored Bayern in the league this season. I think the question is going to be how they respond in the summer with rumors of where players are going. Whether Hummels likes it or not, how it was handled, he's likely going to Bayern this summer. There's also rumors around Gundogan going to City. There's also rumors that people are interested in Weigl. A lot of rumors around Royce Mkhitaryan, Aubameyang, all those. So depending on who they lose, I think, depends how far they go. I have supreme faith in Tuchel as a manager. He gets the best out of players, but if you lose that many of your key assets in one summer, sometimes it's like an absolute atom bomb going off, and you don't know how to respond for a while. So the jury's still out how far they'll go. I think it's based off who they lose. But Leverkusen, I think, could get to the knockout stages. Actually, I think they could even make a dark horse run to the quarterfinals if Roger Schmidt keeps getting the best out of the players who have turned up the second half of the season. On the normal pod, I've mentioned how they needed to get the best out of the likes of Bellarabi, Julian Brandt, and such. And if they keep Chicharito and they keep those 2 wingers fit and firing all season next season, I think they could surprise a few people in Champions League and make a small little run that no one expects. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll stay tuned. And calling it now, bit controversial. If Schalke get the right managerial appointment, I think they could win the Europa League next year. So
well, as we discussed pre-pod, there was rumors that Marcus Weinzel is going to Schalke, so I think he would be an excellent fit for them. So with him and how well they looked under him, how well Augsburg looked under him in the Europa League, I know they lack quality, but they turned up well. They give a lot of good performances under him. So with a club with better resources, with a better talent pool, I think Schalke could be a dark horse. I would agree with you, yeah.
We shall see. Right, we've had a late run-in. We've had a late question come in from our very own Danny, who just wants to ask a quickie. He just wants to know, on the Champions League, he said, can we expect the same sort of Champions League final as we saw in 2014, where Atletico got a walloping, and he said 12 yellows and Diego sent off. And I was trying to remember. I remember it all went off at the end. So... taking the score away, do you think we could be in for some more fireworks between coaches, players, etc.?
I think it's always going to be like a knockdown bar brawl with these two. Like, they don't like each other, obviously. And I feel like Atletico's going to be fired up. But I think they might also learn that lesson. I think they shot themselves in the foot the last time they made the final, so I don't think they'll want to repeat it again. Also, a lot of their other players, they're more experienced now. They've come into their own. Like, Koke almost didn't even show up most of the time in the final, but now I think, as I said before, he's one of the better central players in Spain, if not the world at the moment. Griezmann is about to hit his prime, and he's one of the best players in the world right now. I think there'll be passion in it. I think there's going to be yellows, especially when you have Real playing by themselves, let alone Atletico are in the mix, and then vice versa. So, but I think that's going to add to the feel of the match. When you have a rivalry this big, you're going to see a bit of grit in it, but I don't think it's going to become anything like it was the first time. At least I hope it's not, because if it is, I for one will be disappointed. So.
Yeah, it'll be a bit of a knockdown, as you say, a bit of a barroom brawl, but we shall see. We shall see. And as I said, we will be across it one way or the other, and we'll be across both finals, and we'll have much to discuss. I think the plan is we'll probably try and get Tom on one, if not both of those, to discuss the Spanish element as well. So stay tuned for that. Okay, that will bring us to an end then. A bit of a shortened version this week, but obviously only 4 games to talk about, so we can only do so much. But thank you very much to Bren for his question, and obviously anyone that tunes in to listen to this, we appreciate it as usual. Do drop us a line. Do look out, actually, we always ask for questions on the main pod. We usually send a tweet out. It's normally sort of Monday afternoon. And then on the Satchel, obviously Thursday evening, and the English breakfast, we usually ask for questions sort of late Sunday evening. So keep an eye on our podcast, on our Twitter feed for our podcast question section is at the FH Pod, and you can always send us some questions via direct message or leave us a comment on YouTube, and of course iTunes reviews. Keep them coming, we appreciate it. But that is it for tonight. So thank you, Drew, for stepping into the breach. Much appreciated.
Sure, no problem. Thanks for having me again.
And thank you to all of our listeners as usual. Keep your beard strong and your glasses trendy. And we'll see you at the finals.
Down by Cafu. In towards Gerrard! Hello! Here we go! Steven Gerrard! Now Ronaldinho. Oh, it's a terrific goal! Wonderful, wonderful goal! There's a mistake by Bernat. It's let Messi in! He makes the difference for Barcelona! Popped into the penalty area towards Zidane! Oh, fantastic!